here we've got the Prince AirStick 130. This racket was made famous by Ramy Ashour, as you can see, probably in that photo there. Ramy Ashour, former world #1, generally considered to be one of, if not the most skillful player of all time, if certainly in his generation. He won countless tournaments with this racket, and basically it's a pretty iconic racket, really. I'm stringing it up today with Technofiber 305 1.10, which is the thinnest of the Technofiber 305 strings, built purely for performance. Durability, if you're looking for a durable string, this definitely isn't it. But if you're a decent player that just wants some good performance, good cut on the ball, good power, good feel, then this is a great string choice to have. I'm going to string this one at £25. So normally I'd string power rings at between sort of 26 to 28, but as it's a 1.10, I'm just going to take it down a little notch. Thinner string, sometimes you don't need it strung quite so tight. Excuse me, just to start with, let's get it all set up. So, things to consider. So obviously no real short side or long side in this because it's done as a two-piece. By the way, in case anybody strings these rackets, the power rings, as a one-piece, don't. They're set up for stringing two-piece only, because you've got the power ring. It's such a different setup with the mains and the crosses on this racket. If you try and do it as a one-piece, the tension will just go all over the place with the crosses. So Prince recommend only ever string this as a two-piece. It's designed to be strung as a two-piece. One of the few squash rackets that would be strung as a two-piece. So what you need to do is, first of all, you need to pick your sides. So that side, this side, left, right, short, long, whatever you want to call it. And on one of the sides, so on this side, for example, I'm going to be going under the power ring and then over, then feeding it through. You double pull when you do it. On the other side, I'll be doing completely the opposite. So I'm just going to get that clamped in there. And we're going to pull, so just making sure that we've got it fairly central there. Good. And just doing a couple each side as you go through as well. So again, so we're going under the ring and over. I'll talk to you about a few of the other little tricks as well with this racket as we go through. So just wait for a little bit as well. Don't clamp it down as quickly as you would with other rackets, because you've got this power ring. You're effectively double pulling up there. Although there's not a lot of friction there, so you can pull it that way. I always leave it just a little bit longer, just to let as much tension come through as possible. And on this side, so we're going to switch over to the other side now. We go over the ring and then underneath, which is the opposite to what we did on the other side. Bring that string through, again making sure at the throat that we don't cross anything over. So what you should see is you got up, down, up, down, up, down. It should go in that sequence. It's actually really important that you map out exactly what you're going to be doing with this racket before you string it, because you've got lots of double barrel grommets and other tricks and bits and pieces as well to contend with as you go through, because you need to start it with a hard weave and finish it with a hard weave as well, which is why it's really important to pay a bit of attention with this one. So it's our first double grommet one here. You probably can't see it, but you've got one hole that goes at the top and one at the bottom. We're going to go through the bottom on this one. On all of these ones on the side, we're going to go on the bottom. On the other side, we're going to go on the top. So thread it through to the next one, to the next double barreled grommet, and we're going bottom. And it's important that you get it bottom on there, because what you've got is, when you do the crosses a bit later on, you need to make sure that, you've got no crossing over, no kind of gaps on there at all. And also another thing to just consider as well, you do have, you can't see it but I'm just holding my nail underneath it here, so you've actually got some little slats or slots on the top of the bumper here which hold the string in place either above or below when you've got the double grommets. It's really important that you have that all lined up properly, otherwise it's difficult to get it actually looking neat afterwards. So we're going to swap to the other side now. Again, this one, remember, we're doing the opposite, so we're going under and over, and we're going on the top of the double grommets here. Little rule of thumb is if you're going over there, go over there. So far it's all looking pretty good. Again, just making sure we're going through the top, the double barrel grommet, adding an extra 10%, so another couple of pounds or so onto the tension here because it's a tie-off string. Just need to add a little bit there. And I'm going to do a nice secure panel knot on here. So I'm actually going to use my starting clamp because I've done 4 of these already, and pulling the slightly thinner strings by hand. Sometimes you just wear your fingers out a little bit, so it just makes it a bit easier, a bit more consistent. Snip it off, not too high, not too low. The last string on this side. So again, going over and then under, then through the bottom of the double barreled grommet there. And again, what we're talking about is that kind of consistency piece, just making sure that we get everything right. And the little slats on here, making sure that I'm guiding that string so it's on the bottom of the slat. Add that 10%. You can tell a good stringer normally by how good the string job actually looks. So if it looks a bit messy and a bit uncalculated on the outside, the loops, then the chances are not a great deal of carrying attention's been paid to it in the first place. So it's all well and good getting the tension right, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't bode well for the rest of the job as well. I'll show you what I mean at the end of the video with the little slats on the outside, just to make it a bit clearer. For anyone interested, the amount of string I use to string one of these rackets is actually 6 of my arm spans, so I'm 6'1" and a bit, 6 of my arm spans worth of length of the string, so use a little bit more on this side. Right, I'm going to do a starting knot in a minute on this, so tell you what, let's thread it through another one first. So we talk about the hard weaves, so I know this already just through looking at it, but if you do it the way I've done it, always start with the cross going under on this side, underneath the first main that you put it under, and you want it basically so it's going to compact, it's going to push down on the strings or pull up. So that's the hard weave, so it's the most line of resistance on there. And what you'll find is for the first few strings, it's probably a little bit more resistance coming through, but it's really important that you do it correctly, otherwise it doesn't finish up straight. It doesn't come up straight at the beginning either. So as I said, just using a starting like that. We'll get that tied off in a minute. You don't have to, I mean you can use a starting knot. I quite often use the starting knots on these anyway, but I think it just creates a better job when you do it. So probably taking a little bit longer than I normally would in the first few crosses. That's just because I'm being careful to make sure that there are no cross strings underneath here. But again, at the end I'll show you what I mean, because it's quite easy to get these rackets wrong. So one little trick is you can actually feed a string through the channel through here. Another one. Becomes a little bit easier when you get to the midpoint. It saves you from actually having to weave it. So that's only on one side though, you can't do that on the other side as well, because one's a hard weave, one's not. So we tension that string. So now I'm just going to pull tension on here, just add a little bit of juice on it. Careful there, take that clamp off because we've got it clamped up there so it's nice and secure. Again, you can use a starting knot if you want to on here. It's not too much of a problem doing that, especially if you haven't got a starting clamp. But to most serious stringers, I'd probably recommend you get a starting clamp anyway, because they are pretty useful things. Okay, just release tension. Yep, plenty, so that's good. And just gonna quickly neaten that up a little bit up at the top. Perfect. Give it a little snip. Now I can get to the serious work of getting these crosses done. One thing just to note as well, the reason why you've got to be careful with those double grommets, I'm not sure if you can see here, but on this particular racket here, might be able to see here, it's all lined up correctly, so you've got no strings kind of crossing over. So it's really important, see if you can see that, so it's really important to make sure you do all your prep work and get everything right before you actually string. Another thing which you can do on the one side is you can actually just guide that string straight through the loop there. It's one of these time-saving things, but you can only ever do that on one side. Oops, I didn't get the string caught. But yeah, it's important to be neat and tidy when you're doing these, and to really pay some care and attention. They don't actually take that long to string these rackets. Once you're used to it, the key is to do a few, get used to what you're doing, and then it does make life an awful lot easier. And again, it's a much better way of doing it if you're stringing one cross ahead, so you're not pulling tension on two strings at the same time, only ever pulling tension on one string at a time. But it does help hugely if you do string one ahead, just because it cuts down on the amount of friction, especially on technifiber strings where they can burn a little bit. And you want them to be nice and polished and waxy when you finish. You don't want to have loads of grooves and dents in them all the time. So slightly different ways of weaving this racket compared to most. As you can see, it's quite a busy pattern, there's lots going on, so it's not easy to do just sort of generic finger weaving through these. So I kind of pass the string through that side, but then you make up your time on the other side and you pass it through, through the throat, I say. There we go, that's easier. I've got the mount for the camera in my way for quite a bit of this, so it's actually not easy to get too close to the string bed. So I'm kind of doing this at a bit of a distance. And I'm just being really careful with the string here. But to anybody who hasn't used the 1.10 version of 305, definitely give it a go at some point. Again, as I probably explained beforehand, it's not the string you want to have if you're looking for super durability. It's as durable as it's going to be for the gauge it is, for the thickness, for 1.10 string. You know, it's as durable as it can be, but with that kind of width on a string, you are just going to have it really for performance. God, so I can do better than this. It's pretty slow reading, so I'm just going to revert to doing a bit more of a stitch on that. So as we get closer and closer down, it gets tighter and tighter. Another little trick, if you start to struggle a little bit to pull these strings through because there's so much resistance there, just get a starting clamp, just pull a bit through that, that should help. But hey, at least one side's dead easy to string. But yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of people who, another little tip here as well, keep some space in between these strings, makes it easier. There are quite a few people who don't like stringing powering rackets. Don't really understand that, if I'm being honest with you. I think they're really good. I think they certainly do test your skills a bit more. To some, probably their patience, I think, because with a lot of powerings there are little intricate details to them that make them different from the next. So for example, there are some powerings which don't have 16 mains, they have 14, so you actually have to start from the throat on the main string. So there are a few like that, some with double barrels, some with the O ports or the speed ports on them as well, where you need to use a brake. So there are enough differences to keep you interested. But once you've learned a few of them, the rest does kind of fall into place a bit. So, last cross here. Again, what I'm doing is I'm just moving it into position straight away, getting really nice and close up to the frame because it allows you to on this one. With my extra 10% tension. Again, getting a decent knot in here as well. Fortunately, I'm doing this right by where the post is for the camera, so just to make my life even more awkward. There we go. Right, just keep that all clamped in. There we go. Give it a little snip. Done. As with any racket, although the strings are pretty straight, just getting them absolutely dead straight, because once they set in position, they'll notch up and you won't get them back out again. So always get the strings nice and straight as soon as you string the racket. That way you'll have far less string movement, or at least they'll snap back into place better at the end. And nothing worse than powering with a messy looking string bed. I want it to look good. Again, this is very, very blunt, this. It's specifically made, it's a setting off all specifically made for this. Cool. So there we go. Well done.